Today's message is going to be called Satisfied or Sustained. So kind of like the background of this is I had like a prophetic vision or something that actually I was sitting like right there where Joss is sitting last Sunday, and I wanted to share it with you guys. But today's message, like I said, is called Satisfied or Sustained, and I'm going to share with you guys the like vision I had, and here's what it was. So I was like just sitting in worship, and I closed my eyes, and I felt God almost play like a movie in my head, and it was of these like 10 people, and they were in Africa, and they were like so thirsty they didn't have any water, and so they traveled like a day away to go to this waterfall, and 5 of them brought barrels, and 5 of them were so thirsty they didn't even think to bring anything else because they just wanted water in the moment. So they go to find this waterfall, and they all get water, and then after that, the 5 people that had barrels, they filled up their water. And so they go back home, and about a day later, the same people that didn't bring barrels were thirsty again because they didn't bring things to sustain them. And so I was kind of like confused. I was like, God, what does that have anything to do with what you're doing in my life or what you're doing in other people's lives? And he began to show me this. He said, some people just want me for 1 second. They want me to fix a situation in their life, but they don't really want me. They don't want my water to sustain them. And so that's kind of what stems from this message. Do you want to be satisfied for a moment, or do you want to be sustained in God's presence? So I'm going to read you guys kind of what I wrote down in that moment whenever God gave me this vision. I said, whenever you're hungry for God, you want to be sustained, so you're ready and prepared to be filled. That's all the people they brought buckets, because they were ready to be sustained from that moment, from what God was doing. But some people are just looking for a one-time thing because they're in a hard spot. And so today's message, I just want to kind of talk about, do we look for God's hand or do we look for God's heart? Because I think a lot of people, we look to see, God, will you bless this area of my life, or will you fix this one area of my life? But you don't want God to control your life. You want to be in control of your life. Because I think a lot of times, we've all kind of lived life where we want everything done in our hands. We want to be in control. But the thing is, whenever you're a follower of God, you let him take control. You lay down your desires of your life so that he can take over. And so I think a lot of times we label ourselves, we're followers of God, we're disciples of God, but we're really not. Because if we're in control of our own lives, then we're not a follower of God. I think a lot of times that we say, God, I lay everything down at your feet, but do we really? Do we really throw our cares and our desires into what he's doing over our life? And a lot of times we think, I want this and this and this, but God's saying, if you lay down those desires, I can actually start to move in your life. So I want to talk about this for a second. Do we want a quick fix from God or a lasting effect? The difference between being satisfied or sustained is giving up control over your life so that God can sustain every area of your life. So I think about it like this. Whenever I first became like radical for God or on fire for God, I said, God, how do I get from where I'm at now? Like living in these like sin cycles and, praising your name on Sundays, but then just living an average day-to-day normal teenager life. How do I go from where I'm at right now to where I want to be? How do I become a disciple of who you are? How do I become a true follower of your name? And here's what he told me. He said, I am a God of fire. And I was like, what does that mean? Like, whenever I think of fire, I go to Redwater, so like the dragon fire, things like that. And I was like, God, what do you mean? And he began to show me that I'm a God of fire. I don't just light your candle. I don't just mark you one time. I consume your life. Whenever you think about fire, fire doesn't just stop because you tell it to. It like rages and it consumes everything in its path. Because fire, we all know it can like burn down houses and things like that. So whenever God told me that, he began to reveal to me, he says, whenever you truly have the fire of me inside of you, I don't just barely touch you. I don't just barely mark you. I consume everything in your life. So God wants to consume your life. And so I think that also means whenever we lay down our desires, we let him consume our life, and he gets to make our decisions and open up doors for us. God is a raging fire that pushes past every one of our sins, every one of our strongholds. And I heard this quote one time, and it says, God doesn't burn you because you're not holy for him. He burns you until you're holy. And that kind of sounds weird, but whenever you think about it, if I have certain things in my life, if I have certain sins or strongholds or bondage that's ruling my life, if I let God take over, he burns those things because it's keeping me from being in his presence. Anything that's in front of him in our lives, he burns those so that he can be in control of our life. So I think of this. My dad was a farmer all growing up, and he told me this story one time, and he said that whenever he was younger, he would like set fire to all of his fields in the winter. And I was like, Dad, why would you do that? Because the fire like rages and burns everything in its path, and it burns all of the grass. And I was like, that sounds really reckless. Why would you do that? And he said, the reason I do that is because I burn all the old grass so new stuff can grow. Hey, Emma. How are you? And so he said he burns everything. He burns all the grass so new stuff can grow. And so I was thinking with my natural mind, that sounds really reckless. But if you think about it, if we let God do that in our life, he burns all the other things so that he can grow new things. And so whenever I was preparing for this message, I felt God tell me to go back in my journal from whenever I was at an internship this summer, for whenever I first had an encounter with God, and he gave me the vision for the move. And I'm going to read it to you guys because it was super life-giving to me. So here's what happened in this. So I had a dream, and in this dream, I woke up, and I set up, and I was in my bed, and I woke up, and I normally have a charm bracelet on my hand, and this charm bracelet has labels of what I used to do, like volleyball, basketball, track, videography, photography, things like that. So every time I would make a major accomplishment in my life, I would go buy this charm to put on my charm bracelet. And so in this dream, I woke up, and all of the charms had fell off of my hand. And so obviously, I was looking around for it because they were all special to me. And I felt God tell me this. I'm going to read it to you guys because this is what I wrote down a couple of months ago. He said, whenever I'm making room for what's to come, you're stepping into a new season, and you have to leave behind old habits, routines, beliefs, friendships, so that you can prepare your heart for what is to come. And so with that being said, I thought that was so good because God was saying, I had to remove your old labels. I had to make way for what I'm about to bring. Because sometimes we fill our lives with all these natural things, which isn't wrong, but we have to also leave space for God to control and move in our lives. So if we put so many things before him, then we control ourselves with our natural mind, so we don't have time to let him rule. And so I think that was such a good example whenever God was saying, I'm removing all those old things that I can spark something new in you. So I'm going to read you guys Hebrews 12:29 if you want to flip there with me. And here's what it says. Okay, here it is. Since we are receiving our rights to this unshakable kingdom, we should be extremely thankful and offer God the purest worship and delight his heart as we lay down our lives in absolute surrender filled with awe. For our God is a holy and devouring fire. And I love that because it says, I lay down my life in absolute surrender to your will because I'm so in awe of who you are. And then it says God is a holy and devouring fire. And I love that. So the last thing I kind of want to talk to you guys about today is the definition of being a follower of Jesus. So I'm going to open up the floor for y'all's opinions. What do you think being a follower of Jesus is in this culture? Whenever you say, I'm a follower of Jesus, what kind of comes to your mind first? I think in this culture, I think people say being a follower of Jesus means, I go to church every Sunday, and people check that off a box. That means I follow Jesus, I'm a Christian. Or that means you sit through Sunday morning, Sunday night. I think that's kind of what the definition of being a follower of Jesus is today. But God's definition is this. A lot of people think if I desire it, I want it. We all have that kind of mindset of if it's going to make me happy, then I'm going to go and do it. That's a mindset that almost all of Gen Z has. But God says this. He says, whenever you are a true follower of me, you can't put anything else in front of me. Whenever I desire, you desire. Your desires don't come before me. So I'm going to read to you guys in Matthew, if you guys want to flip there with me. It's Matthew 16:24. Here's what it says. Then Jesus said to his disciples, if you truly want to follow me, you should at once completely reject and disown your own life. You must be willing to share my cross and experience it as your own. For as you continually surrender to my ways, if you choose self-sacrifice and lose your life for my glory, you will continually discover true life. Okay, so that verse is a little bit wild because whenever you think about it, you think it's my life, I'm going to control all my decisions. But God is saying, if you want to be my disciple and if you want to truly follow me, so that means following Jesus does not mean going to church every Sunday and that's it. That means literally spending every single day with him. That means not even just spending time with him, but also walking with him in every aspect of your life. You don't just turn Christianity off and on. It's a every single moment of your life thing. And it says, you have to completely reject and disown your own life. And that's very forward because it means that your desires don't come before God. His desires are your desires. And that's what it truly means to follow God. It says you are continually surrendering to his ways. If you choose to self-sacrifice and lose your life for his glory, that's whenever you truly discover the true meaning of life. Okay,